Hello, 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 and welcome to another episode of the Juan podcast, where everything you thought you knew is a lie. On this episode, we talk to Mark Sargent. Mark is a flat earther. He considers himself the freshman recruiter of the Flat Earth University, this hypothetical place where flat earthers get together, right? And I feel that you don't really understand the whole truth unless you take a look at the whole picture. You know, how can you know the whole thing if you only take a look at one part of it? So, flat earth has always been a thing that I knew about but didn't really dive into. I'm not really convinced about it, but it's a possibility. I talk about a lot of things on here that are crazy on the show. Flat Earth, why not, right? So I reached out to Mark, super cool guy. He's been on a few documentaries, especially the one that, or most notably the one on Netflix. I believe it's called Behind the Curve. You could check him out on there, and then obviously check out his YouTube channel. But yeah, we just go into Flat Earth, what some of the evidence behind it is. You know, the reptilian overlords are really making us think that the globe is fake and the world is flat. So, without further ado, this is Flat Earth with Mark Sargent. Live, welcome to the show, Mark. Thank you so much for coming on my little show. I know you're a busy guy, but I felt like I needed to reach out to you, and obviously you got back to me, so that's great. How are you doing today, man?
I'm doing well, and thanks for having me. And again, not a big deal. Look, I've done everything from junior high schools. In fact, I just did a high school 15 minutes ago in East Los Angeles, and I've also done major networks. So no, I'm never going to be one of those people that'd be like, you're too small. I'm never going to talk to you. No.
It's like, why do my show when you can be on tinfoil hats, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of stuff. Look, that's part of what I do. I mean, I try to talk to as many people as possible, and if I have the time, by God, I'm going to do it.
Right on. So, Mark, this is a question that I ask everybody who comes in the show.
Mm-hmm.
Who is Mark Sargent?
You don't ask everybody who is Mark Sargent, because a lot of
Not
people.
Mark Sargent, but
That's really flattering that you would ask everybody that. No, officially, I'm the freshman recruiter for a metaphorical place called Flat Earth University, which is scattered across the internet. It's basically him. I'm a nice guy who started his career in playing video games for a living, believe it or not, back in the 90s, and then got into proprietary tech support and was really naive. I grew up on a really rural island north of Seattle, where at night they roll up the sidewalks and shut all the lights off. And when I got into conspiracies, I had an opinion on it. It was like, wow, there's some really interesting stuff out there, stuff that you're not going to see on the news. And then when I got into this, all the other conspiracies became second rate, second tier. But yeah, that's really what I am. This is what I do now, 24/7. This is I get up every morning and look at the world news and look at the flat Earth stories and try to analyze what's going on and spread the word. That's what I do.
Right on. So, again, and I'm going on record to say this, I'm not a journalist. I'm not here to attack you. I'm not here to debate you. This isn't a conspiracy podcast either. This is a podcast about different. This is going to be an archive for me about different weird things that I'm into. But I love conspiracies, right? So
Sure.
Before we get into it, I just, full disclaimer, I am biased towards it. I've listened to podcasts you've been on. I've looked at the videos. I think, what's that guy's name? Dubé. I watched that video when it was first out.
Yeah.
I've seen it. I've seen it all. And again, last week I did an episode on Hollow Earth. You know what I mean? I like that idea as well, because it blows my mind that we want to colonize other planets if they're even real, and we'll get into that.
Yeah.
Without facing, we don't even know what's at the bottom of our oceans. We don't even know what happens in a 1 by 1 square of soil. You know
Right.
what I mean? Let
Right.
alone that we want to go and colonize other planets. So, uh, I think it's perfect that yesterday I'm in Florida. I went to
Mm-hmm.
Kennedy Space Center. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I know what I like about the flat Earth model and the theory or hypothesis, whatever you want to call it, is that it ties into another hypothesis that I love, the simulation theory, right?
Sure.
The projections in the sky of the moon, or the projection in the sky of the planets, the Elohim, whatever you want to call it. There's different names for it,
Yeah.
but when I was there and I was looking at all these rockets and these models and stuff like that, I said one thing to myself, and this is after a week of doing research on your stuff. I said, Mark says that pretty much space is fake.
Yeah.
I'm an amateur astronomer. I look up at the stars through my telescope, and I see celestial bodies. And
Yeah.
I said, damn it. And I told my fiance this, and I said, this is a lot of work for it to all be fake. But then
Well, a lot of work for us, sure. I mean, our engineering skills are tiny by comparison, but look
yeah,
at, I mean, to the ant, it looks like a lot of work, the ant farm that we build. But for us, it's like, oh no, we can put that together in 30 minutes.
yeah, you're
Um,
right. You're right.
we're
Yeah, for
talking,
something that you don't understand, I could see where that could be an issue. You're right.
yeah, I mean, look, think about it this way, and I've had this discussion with a lot of people. I had several amateur astronomers come at me. It's like, look, I can see the moons of Jupiter through my
Mm-hmm.
telescope. It's like, fine, take a pair of binoculars, go to a planetarium, and I know that dates me because nobody goes to planetariums anymore. Planetarium, just so you know, kids, is a domed structure, like a small sports stadium,
Mm-hmm.
but where the seats are, where you can basically lie back in the
And you
seats
hear
and
Neil
look up.
deGrasse Tyson narrating it, by the
Yeah,
way.
Neil deGrasse Tyson narrated it, and the planets and the stars are just lights on the ceiling. And I say, take a pair of binoculars to one of these planetariums and look at Jupiter. Does it look spherical? Yes, it does. And I go, can you land on it? They go, well, no, it's just a image on the ceiling. I go, it's my point. I go, if you walk out of that building, who's to say you're just not in a much, much bigger building with more lights on the ceiling, which has got engineering built in? Come on. We've had, what, HD television for not even 20 years? That's
Mm-hmm.
HD television. There's kids growing up now. It's like, wait, there used to be, cheap television, like crappy television. It's like, yeah, but we didn't know it was crappy. What happens, we've got what, 4K going on 8K now?
Yeah,
What
yeah.
if you had million K monitors? What could you do with that sort of tech? What could you fool? Who could you fool? Which is why I use the Truman Show as a great reference. If you spent a couple $1 billion, could you build a planetarium that was so big, and if somebody was born inside it, could you fool them? Yeah, you could. Because and it's such a great line from that movie, we believe the world that is presented to us.
Well, look at the Matrix.
Look
A
at the
perfect
Matrix.
example.
The Matrix is a wonderful movie, and its rival, The 13th Floor, which
Amazing.
was based on a German movie from the 70s called World on a Wire, which is based on a book in the 60s called Simulacron 3. No small coincidence there. That Simulacron simulation. And
Mm, yeah.
yeah, I mean, it blows my mind, and I even talk about this in my last book, in the last chapter, which is, I'd love to talk to people more about simulations, but the general public doesn't understand it. They still
No.
don't. I mean, the Matrix is 21 years old,
Well, it's
and
it's like Morpheus. It's so hard to understand that we're in a simulation. And that book that you're talking about is the one that he opens up at the beginning, and
yeah.
he takes the what the hell is it, the tapes or something out of it. Uh, Neo at the beginning of the movie. They put that book in there. I don't
Oh,
know if you
right, right,
caught.
right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The yeah, most people, which is also why Morpheus says we don't free minds after a certain age, because you just can't take it. You really have a hard time, especially, which is why Flat Earth skews younger. It was amazing, that the U.gov survey that came out some years ago, where they found, but they noticed the 18 to 24-year-olds were skewing a full third against the globe. And it was like, really? And
Really?
that spooked science badly, to where that's when
Wow.
National Geographic called me, and other people called me, and said that we could be causing harm. But what blew me away was when under 18 we're skewing, pushing 50%. Now, of course, 50% anonymously. If you put them in a group of people, it's like, raise your hand if you think. No, they're not raising their freaking hand because of peer pressure. Look up, there's a wonderful, I don't know if you watch any gaming videos, but there's a wonderful video by a gamer called Asmongold where he did a little straw poll and he said, is the earth flat? Actually, just threw it up there. And it was, I think we were scoring 53%. And, what was it, 120 votes a second were flying
Wow.
that thing. And it was amazing. So sorry,
So
I'm going off track.
it's
What else
all
you
good, man. I got some questions for you. So obviously we're talking about flat Earth, and what got you started into looking at the flat Earth model? Because correct me if I'm wrong, you got into it in 2014, and you made your first video.
Yeah. Middle of 2014 was when I looked into it. Worst mistake of my life
You were
because
trying to troll people, weren't you? You were trying to make a troll video, and then it turned
no,
out to.
no, not even. In 2014, I wasn't doing anything. I was literally just having a peaceful, stay out of history's way life, drinking wine and eating popcorn and watching movies and playing games. And then all of a sudden, I was I'd gone through just about every conspiracy I could think of. It's like, okay, this I like, this I don't like. And I didn't want to look at flat Earth, and I did. And then I said, well, this is silly. I mean, flat Earth obviously it's not real, right? It can't be real. So I tried to disprove it for, week after week. And I was getting more and more frustrated to where that's when, February of 2015, where I said, you know what? I'm just going to take a shot here and I'm going to make a video or series of videos in this case, and really short, less than 15 minutes long, put them out on the internet and say, okay, I don't think it's a globe anymore. Here's why. Tell me where I screwed up. And honest to God, just wait. It's like, okay, some academic's going to say, okay, well, here's where you screwed up, and then you can, go back to your normal life. And it was the opposite. People just started. No time was I trying to troll anybody. I was literally just saying, internet hive mind, help me out. Tell me where I made a mistake. And people started calling me from all walks of life, and it was the subject matter experts between 2015 and 2016, which blew me away. All branches of the armed forces, engineers, pilots, surveyors, air traffic controllers, take your pick. I mean, there was just all these people that got a hold of me, and they said, you know what? Not that crazy. Here's why. And I put them, I interviewed them. Did a little podcast of my own on TFR and interviewed these people, put them in a big list, and just started pumping out more and more videos on a regular basis. And it just kept growing and growing to where now it's just gotten ridiculous. I mean, we have conferences, and I can't even go to all the conferences that are in different countries. We have regional meetups, hundreds and hundreds of regional meetups all over the country and outside this country. And I've done 2 books, documentary, and at this point, I might even have an agent next week. So go
Wow.
figure. Yeah, no.
Who knows? Yeah, that's funny where life takes you. But
Yeah.
so in a quick breakdown crash course,
Yeah.
what is flat Earth? Can you take us through? Obviously, flat. It's not a
Yeah,
globe.
it's
What does it consist of?
it's not just flat, but it's enclosed. So you're talking about you're living in right now. We're taught, of course, that we're on this tiny little rock with a little bit of gas and water on top of it, and it's flying through space. This impossible vacuum, this massive, massive universe, which is 99% wasted space. But what we're saying is that you're in a building, basically like the Truman Show, like basically a shallow sports stadium that's not in space at all. It could be sitting anywhere. It could be sitting on, God's desk for all we know. And it has walls and a floor and a ceiling. And it'd be like if you take your favorite covered sports stadium, and I know they don't have a lot of covered ones down in Florida, but if you take like the Superdome and you hollow it out and you put a big saltwater lake in the middle of it, and then put some islands in the middle of that, which would be our continents, and then surround the entire outside of it with ice, which would be Antarctica. Antarctica isn't, of course, the end of the world, but it's the beginning of the end. To where the Antarctic coastline, if you went thousands of miles inland, I have absolutely no doubt that you would run into the edge of the world. It's not like Thor, where it's the cosmic waterfall. Everyone, that's probably the biggest mistake is people say it's, oh, this flying asteroid, this flat asteroid in space. It's like, no, there's no space. There doesn't have to be space. In fact, the only reason you think there's space is because you've been told that over and over and over and over again for all these years. Why people get hung up on that a lot, to where I've literally had people come back at me and say, oh, it's like, okay, the moon landing was fake. We get that. But you can't tell me that, like, everything else is fake too. I was going, if the moon landing was fake, why would you believe anything else?
Mm-hmm.
So
They've been caught lying, and that's my problem. When I was at Kennedy Space Center, because I look into all this stuff. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah,
And when you tell people, and I want to get your input on this, when you tell people about other conspiracy theories, 9/11 was an inside job. Oh, for sure. The
yeah.
Earth is flat. No, 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 it's
No,
not.
no,
It's this and that.
can't.
Why the hostility and the dogma towards it? You know what
It's
I mean?
it's too big. That's why. And you're absolutely right. I've had, in fact, some of our biggest detractors are 9/11 fans, where 9/11, inside job. Everybody knows this, and 9/11 is not. It's been 20 years, 20 years
Mm-hmm.
since 9/11 was a thing, and people come at me. It's I can shut it down in a one sentence. They say, well, 9/11 no is real. It's like, really? Tell me about Building 7. You can
Yeah.
explain Building
Yeah.
7 to me.
Controlled demolition. Yeah. A lot of people don't know about that building though.
Yeah, Building 7 wasn't hit by anything, just dropped. But in
Mm-hmm.
fact, it's amazing how many people don't even know that Building 7 was a thing. That's
Yeah.
because the island was evacuated hours earlier. And so it just never, the news didn't talk about it. But they come back and say, no, 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 the flat earth thing, it's too big. It's because you can't walk away from it. That's why. What I like to say about conspiracies is that most conspiracies you can walk away from if you wanted to. There's some secrets you can bury in the desert, no question. But flat Earth is
Literally and figuratively as well, by
yeah,
the way.
literally figuratively. Go outside of Vegas. There's a lot
Yeah.
of bodies out there.
Mm-hmm.
Not just Area 51. I mean, Area 51 is a real thing, but you don't have to
Egypt.
think. You don't have to think about it. Flat Earth is again, which is why it's so like the Matrix. Is you're telling a person that the world isn't what they think it is. And you might as well be telling him about the Matrix. And you saw what happened to Neo. He freaks out. And that wasn't a bad depiction because lots of people, I've talked to people, they go through the 5 stages of acceptance. Denial followed by anger, bargaining, depression, and then finally acceptance. They get upset. Really, I had a guy call me. I was on a radio show, wow, back in 2015, and he said that his father worked for NASA, and he literally was yelling at me. And he was older than I was, and he goes, how dare you tell me the world isn't what I think it is? And that was it right there, which was if your conditioning is so complete, we're talking, if you go through 12 years of high school, okay, here's the big one. Here's the big reason. You want the short version why people get so bent out of shape. It's because of the American flag. Boy, you say, what do you mean? Well, if you go into any school, I don't care, grade school, middle school, high school, there's an American flag sitting in the corner. It just sits there. We don't talk about it. We may pledge allegiance, we may not. But you go through 12 years of high school, and that flag in the corner, for some people, inspires them to join the military right then
Mm-hmm.
and there. I'm willing
Mm-hmm.
to fight for this flag. I'm willing to fight for America.
To
Just because
die
it's
for it.
yeah, just because it's there. I mean, there are people that get really bent out of shape. Try burning an American flag somewhere in the Midwest.
Oh.
You'll get stoned
Mm-hmm.
for that. Well, just below that American flag in a lot of classrooms is the globe. It's just a toy. It's just this stupid little blue toy, 12 to 18 inches wide, that sits there, same as the flag, and it sits there from the time you're in kindergarten to the time you graduate from high school. Well, what's the difference? Not much. So when people equate the same thing, it's like, oh, well, that's where we live. Kind of like the flag. It's where we live. I'm willing to fight for it. They're willing to defend it, just not for any other reason other than it's been with them their entire lives. And if you have a bachelor's degree in a physical science or a master's degree in anything, you're not getting out of this. I mean, you're until the mainstream media says, caves in, you're not going to believe it. And I've run into that many, many times. I mean, yes, there's a few people out there, some engineers and other people that have, but for by and large, the majority of people that have, the higher education you get, the more indoctrinated you are. And astrophysicists, they're doomed.
Yeah.
There's nothing they can do. So
Well, to add on what you're talking about, science, with NASA, and there's a lot of things people don't know that they're not going to accept. For example, when I was at Kennedy Space Center this weekend with my fiance, she's not into the conspiracy. She hates it, but I have to unload my information somewhere. So
sure.
here I am pointing out, I was reading this thing. It was like, oh, and von Braun, with the help of von Braun, I was like, do you know who von Braun was? Do you know what he did and who he was? No,
Yeah.
right? People don't know that. And then I pointed out also while we were seeing these models of these rovers, JPL was like, do you know who JPL was, John Parsons Laboratory? Do you know what he did and who he was associated with?
Oh yeah.
And this is the father of modern day propulsion, rocketry propulsion. And it's stuff like that that people don't know. And once you go into that rabbit hole, it's like, listen, again, it'll take away from that patriotic things like, no, we're the best. And I can understand where that's coming from, because when the indoctrination is so deep and so deeply rooted, it's very hard to take that away. And when you're speaking about flat earth, if you really look, there's various clues, and I want to get into that with you. There's various things pointing towards it, and then obviously you have the ancient literatures and these holy scriptures of different religions and different parts of the world that point also to what could be a flat earth. And one of my favorite ones, the book of Enoch, Enochian literature, where God or whoever had the Watchers, and pretty much subcontracted out the work, and it was pretty much an experiment for him. And the reason there was the big flood was because when the Watchers started messing with the humans, the genetics and the Nephilim, and you have the fallen angels and all that stuff, he got angry. Because why? Because they were messing with his experiment. He got angry because they were messing with his experiment. And even now, to touch on the subject that we're talking about, as you get more and more education, the more naive you get. But the thing is, even now, we don't, quantum physics, for example, we don't know. That's guessing. That's literally guessing. The universe is 13 billion years old. How do you even comprehend that number? In 1 light year, there is 7 trillion miles. How do you even comprehend that? That's what blows my mind as an amateur astronomer, that I look up at something and they tell me, oh, it's 200 light years away.
Yeah.
What? It's 1,000 miles from here to New York, and you're telling me it's 7. How do you even comprehend that? That nebula, that gas nebula is, 300 light years big. What?
Yeah. Yeah. The numbers are so huge when they say the numbers are so huge with space that the only way they can make them even remotely relatable to the general public is they have to use brand new terms. I mean,
they literally made the unit. The astronomical unit was made by who? By NASA. By who? By somebody who was run by the government. By the fucking reptilians. There I said.
Yeah. I mean, the astronomical unit, the light year. I mean, the fact that we have to say that light travels per second, because when we say anything bigger than a second, the numbers just become dizzying. You don't ever want to think of them. But yeah, to your point with space, there's certain things when you look at the solar system, and we've had the flat Earth community's had to learn so many little scientific facts. In fact, I've had to relearn more science because of flat Earth, which is amazing. I know more about astronomy now than your average person on the street, just because I had to learn it because I was going after it. And that is, okay, so the Earth is spinning 1,000 miles an hour, supposedly at the equator. It's spinning around the sun. It's 60-something thousand miles an hour. But the one that threw me was that the whole solar system is flying sideways, like a frisbee flying sideways.
Yeah, that's like the new one, right?
Yeah, flying sideways at 500,000 miles an hour, and where the sun is basically, it's like a shotgun, where the sun is the center of the shotgun pattern, and everything else is sailing around it. And I'm going, wait a minute, what about comets and other things? You're saying that the sun, there's these null gravity points, and yet when we send spacecraft off, they just don't go, like when you drop a golf ball out of a car window. Oh yeah, it'll bounce with you for a couple bounces, but then it's gone. Because the momentum, you're not with the car anymore. It's gone. It's going to trail off in the distance. I'm going, so we send long distance space probes to these far planets, and our solar system is traveling sideways at 500,000 miles an hour. Those probes account for that, and you have a way. Tell me how it happens. And that's just the beginning. Don't get me started on space. Yeah. I mean, my God, there's dedicated physicists out there spending time swearing. All they're doing their entire lives now are researching what they call dark matter.
They don't even know matter what that is.
It isn't even a thing. It's not a thing. It's a theory. But they've said it so many times that people believe it's like a real thing. It's like, oh, you mean like Thanos and the whole space thing? I was like, no, not like Thanos. It's not real. It's just a theory, because there's so much.
It's dark. because we can't see it. We don't know what it
Exactly.
is. It makes up what 80 something percent or like
Oh
95% of everything.
yeah. Yeah. What?
What's the crazy
Yeah,
number?
you're right. They call it dark because if they called it invisible matter, people would be
Yeah.
like, "Get out of here!" It's like you can't
Sounds
just make
cooler when you say dark matter and dark energy. Like, oh,
Yeah, yeah,
what?
and they come up with stuff, the gravitational waves that they supposedly detect, and they don't later. They revise it later. It's like, oh no, we didn't, but the headlines still run it anyway. How many stories every month now do we see? It's like, oh, we found these super planets, these exoplanets, planets that could hold life, blah blah blah. There's an asteroid made out of diamonds. There's an asteroid made out of gold. There's an asteroid shaped like Santa Claus. Another one shaped like a jack-o'-lantern. It just never
Yeah.
freaking
Well, you
ends.
you talk about that, but every now and again we're finding what new continents that they're talking about. Like,
Oh
oh,
yeah.
under New Zealand there's a new continent. Oh, between Europe and wherever there's a continent squished in with and that's like we want to go to other planets. But space that's literally a wormhole. But then you would think what you were talking about the different rotations and all this stuff. You
Yeah.
have Stephen Hawking who talks about spaghettification, where
Oh
you just
yeah,
like
yeah. If you were on the edge
wouldn't
of a
that
black
happen
hole.
to us if we're just like swirling all these different directions and like, what? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like that's
yeah.
crazy.
It's
So
a they're great little stories, and I figured it out, a couple of years ago, which was, because people say, what about those stories? I'm going, the stories, they don't even care if you read the article. All they want you to do is glance at the headline or maybe even glance at the image, which is always some CGI thing. And it's about that there is space. That's all they care about, which is, hey, there could be a face on Mars. Hey, there could be something on the top of Jupiter. Hey, there's things on Saturn. They don't care about it, again, the story itself. All it is like you're thinking about Mars because you think you're in space. And Jupiter, space, everything's just this space drumbeat to remind you that it's like, oh yeah, you're in the solar system, you're in this universe, and it works very effectively. Except that nowadays with social media, they've had to really pick up the pace because the stuff has not aged well. A lot of people are asking now. It's like, so why hasn't anybody got back to the moon since
I,
1972?
I I was wondering that today actually. I was wondering that today, and while I was over there at Kennedy Space Center, there was things going on, and I was like, that mission that they went around the dark side of the moon, and I was like, I told my fiance, I was like, what they didn't talk about is the weird noises that those guys were hearing when they were 2 hours or 4 hours on the dark side of the moon, and the weird noises that they recorded that they didn't even know what it was, and then they came out and said, oh, it was just interference.
Yeah.
And it was like these weird alien noises. It just makes me think of H.P. Lovecraft. The that one story he has of the guy who plays the weird music up in his up in his apartment, and the guy underneath him is like listening to him.
Oh yeah, yeah,
The cosmic noise. I forgot the name of the story, but the cosmic noises. I just so it makes me think about it's like these frequencies
yeah,
that. But so to wrap up on this space stuff, because I know that's a wormhole, literally. No pun
yeah,
intended.
yeah, yeah.
To wrap that up, what the hell are we seeing, Mark? What is the moon? What are the planets? What is it? If it's not real, if space isn't real.
You might as well be looking at a television screen. It'd be like showing somebody from, let's say, go back 30 years ago, a 4K television today. And I know you're probably not old enough to remember, but when the early HD televisions came out, they were so crisp compared to what, we could actually compare them to what we were using, that we're like, wow. It's like actual, you could actually move your face really close, and like newscasters, for example, had to change. Some newscasters quit because the resolution was so good. That's what you're looking at. You're looking at a projection. You're looking at a really high-end projection system. With the planets and the stars, that's easy. Those are just lights in the freaking sky. The sun and the moon, a little more involved. One is an incandescent light bulb that generates some heat, and the moon, which generates a cold light, which is just mind-blowing to me that it actually generates a cool laser light, which anybody with a $20 infrared thermometer could test. But they're just lights in the sky. It's basically a giant. What you're looking at is a giant clock. And no one's ever going to dispute that. I mean, it's the whole, astrology is based on that, really. It's the first clock ever created, and it's universal. You don't need to know any languages or anything like that. You don't even have to really know numbers. It is a giant, elaborate clock in the sky. But it's very, very it's ornamental. So, many scriptures have said, the sky is just, not only does it tell, the seasons and all that other stuff, but it also, signs and wonders. type thing. So it's a very elaborate, very cool looking clock.
Which wouldn't be out of the question. And I know one of the other things that you talk about also is and I've seen them personally, the craters on the moon and the way that they're positioned.
Well, they're perfect.
Yeah.
That's the part that people, again, the average, and me included, I am not talking down when I'm saying this. The average person on the street does not, we do not get taught physics and engineering and chemistry and anything along those lines. And the moon is a perfect example of that, which is the law of averages, statistics, right? If you throw enough rocks at something, eventually things are going to skid off in different directions, right? Well, all the moon craters are created like they were hit with meteors or asteroids or whatever you want to call them at a perfect 90-degree angle, meaning they came straight down at it in all the directions. Whatever it hit, it came straight down. It's like, okay, first off, how did the gravity of the Earth not deflect those in any way, shape, or form? And where did they come from that they had to come straight down? It's not like, it absolutely looks this way. And it looks like the moon was decorated that way. It's like whoever built the moon just happened to put maybe whether they were doing it to put breadcrumbs for us to follow, or if it would just look cooler, I don't know. But look at the craters. They're all, there should be, if you're saying, well, what do you mean? What should you see? You should see skidding marks, meteors that glanced the moon's surface and flew off. I mean, go to any firing range and you will see, you'll see some dead hits, on targets here and there, but it's the ricochets, the deflections. That's where most of them are. And the moon is not that. It's the opposite. And again, people miss it. People miss the obvious things. Not to go into the moon thing too much, but look at any moon photo and tell me why the shadows are in different directions. And again, people's like, what should it look like? It's because all the shadows are supposed to go in the same directions. One light source, shadows in one direction. That's how light works.
I didn't think about that one.
and it's like, but again, if people. It's kind of like the spacesuit thing, and I don't want to go into it too much, but the spacesuit thing was a big key for me, which was the spacesuit defies physics. Everything, if you put in a vacuum chamber, blows up into a balloon. Take a can of soda, you take a Stretch Armstrong or any action figure that's got anything pressurized, it blows up into a balloon and then bursts. And there's only one thing it's ever been created that doesn't do this, and that's the spacesuit. And I ask people, I go, which is why I put the spacesuit challenge. I go, give me a freaking spacesuit, put me in a vacuum chamber, tell me how I live, because tell me what in that spacesuit defies physics. And my point is like we see the astronauts running around the moon in high, with slow motion, which doesn't make any sense because they should be running at high speed. It's like, oh, okay, we'll just slow the camera speed down. And they're running around the moon and they can bend their arms and their knees and their fingers absolutely perfectly. They have articulation points where it's like the suit seems perfectly flexible. It was brilliant. Whoever came up with that idea, I hope he retired and died peacefully, because it was a great idea. It was like, because the early suits, you guys can look this up, which is the early NASA spacesuits were made of heavy plastic and metal, and they looked horrible and clunky. And they couldn't get in and out of anything. They could barely even walk.
I saw them. They had like a timeline of all the ones over there at Space Center.
And so, but the engineers going, this is not going to work for production. It's like, what sort of spacecraft are we going to have to try to freaking build to even get these guys to say that we went up there? And then somebody says, you know what? Let's just get them soft suits. Nobody knows anything about physics. They'll buy it. We'll just put it on television. No one will question it. And I'll be damned. Of course, in 1969, nobody knew what those spacesuits were supposed to do. Yeah. Nobody ever. And you guys want to look something up, look up, it's real easy to test. Just go into YouTube and type in vacuum versus steel rail car. People, I don't know, engineers love doing this, where you apply a vacuum field to the inside of a steel, not aluminum, a steel rail car, and it just instantly implodes like it was crushed by Godzilla.
Wow.
Instantly, like in a fraction of a second. And you're saying, well, what's the point? My point is that the movies, and I blame part of this on the movies, it's the one thing they really, really, really get wrong.
They always make it seem like that. When you open it up, you just freeze over and die because you had to.
Well, there's some movies that go the other way, where they say, well, there's a pinhole. It's like, get the duct tape. We only have 2 minutes of air left, and they're running around. It's like, no. If there's a hole in anything, there's a hole in the side of your spaceship.
You're getting sucked out of it, huh?
Well, one, you're dead instantly. Yeah, it'll try to suck you out instantly, but it's like in a fraction of a second. Like if you remember the end of Aliens, where she pulls the airlock and she's
Yeah.
literally crawling against the vacuum, and
Yeah, there's none of
there's
that.
all this air rushing out. That's that no, she'd be dead. And the girl would be dead. Everybody would be dead. I mean, there was a Star Trek episode well, not recently. It was during Enterprise, where there was a dime-sized hole, literally leading to space, and he plugs it with his finger, and then patches the hole with meatloaf. Could not make that up if I tried. And you
Yeah.
show that on television, people are like, "Oh wow, I really should get some meatloaf."
Yeah, yeah.
So anyway,
So to move on, because that's a wormhole, literally. If you guys want to look it up, look it up. It's a
yeah,
wormhole. There's a ton of evidence, whatever.
yeah,
Uh, so we talked about the flat Earth model and Antarctica being a ring around it.
right.
What do you feel are the key pieces of evidence that point us to a flat Earth?
The biggest one, far and away, is long distance photography. Far and away. I mean, I've got 5 great points, but the first one, which everyone will go to right away, is long distance. Meaning that if you look off into the distance, you're looking off over the water usually. You're looking over the curvature of the Earth. And the boat goes off in the horizon and it disappears, and you say, well, it went over the curvature of the Earth. Plain and simple. And I would have been right there with you 10 years ago. And then HD cameras got a lot better to where the zoom now on like the P1000 is like 180x, which is ridiculous. Well, now that boat, which was gone, remember it's gone because of the curvature of the Earth, if you believe mainstream, is 8 inches per mile, or 8 inches per mile squared, which means 3 miles is 3 times 3 is 9 times 8 is 72. 10 miles is 10 times 10 is 100 times 8 inches is 800 inches, and it gets
That's the
worse.
curvature that it goes down.
Eventually it gets more severe because eventually it's
Yeah.
got to go vertical, because eventually you're talking about going off the side of a ball. And but all of a sudden, and I didn't even tell people to do this. This is where it was really amazing. People just started running down to the beaches and with their cameras and start zooming in on things. And they were zooming in on things that were way, way too far away, extremely far away. And sea level is one thing. We've also got guys shooting things from airplanes, which are ridiculously far. But sea level is easier for the math. And like the one that I run into recently, which was done by some of the UK guys, Nathan Oakley's channel, which is really great at this, where they were shooting. In fact, I think the initial shots were done at Miramar Beach, which is California, I believe. And they were shooting oil rigs in the distance. One was at 6 miles and one was at pushing 10. And the camera was only a foot off the water, a foot. What was amazing was, well, not only were they not supposed to see those oil rigs, not by a long shot. What was amazing was the horizon was behind them, on top of it. Now, which blows. We're calling it one of our globe killers because again, a lot of people aren't going to necessarily understand this, but the horizon eventually cannot be behind those objects. They have to be in front. So the oil rigs should be partially obscured
Oh,
by
I
the
got you.
curvature of
Yeah.
the Earth.
Yeah.
And they're not. They're off there in the distance, and there's no excuse. There's no optical
Yeah,
excuse.
but it's thought it would just keep going and going, and obviously the horizon would be behind it because it just keeps going endlessly.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. The difference between the short version of this is a flat horizon. If it's perfectly flat, the only limit to your viewing distance would be your camera or the thickness of the atmosphere, because we're breathing in mostly nitrogen and
And
a little bit of
pollution and stuff like that as
well,
well.
yeah, pollution and haze and temperature and humidity and all that other stuff. I mean, it's a soup. And it was a vacuum, you could see very, very far, which, funny enough, that's what happens in the simulations that we make. When we make games, and this has been true since games have been out there, I don't care if it's modern like Fortnite or GTA or Minecraft or whatever, you can see really, 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 really far. And the reason is because when we build simulations, they're all flat. In fact, they're a box. It's a big cake box. Where in fact the sky is just because computers don't like circles. They don't like rounded edges. Computers, in fact, can't draw a circle to save their life. It's just a bunch of tiny squares. There's a reason why pixels are squares. So that's the big one, is long distance photography. The other ones would of course be stuff we were talking about earlier, like the vacuum of space versus gravity. Anyone who wants to question that, it's like, okay, tell me how, if you put a vacuum chamber above you right now, why, and then pop the cork on it. Why? And the air is going to rush. What's going to happen? It's going to go upstairs. If there's a vacuum chamber above you, it's going to go upstairs 100 out of 100 times, a million out of a million times. And the question is, why didn't gravity keep the air in your room right now? And you say, what's your point? I go, my point is when you go outside, how is gravity keeping the air on the ground? You couldn't even keep it in your room. And that was a tiny little piece of crap vacuum chamber. So why is the vacuum of space, which is super, super, super big, why is the vacuum of space not ripping our atmosphere off? Um, Third one would be the eclipse shadow. The eclipse shadow is too small. Can't be that. We say the sun and the moon are less than 50 miles wide, and the eclipse shadow, when it's running across the ground, the blackout zone is only 70 miles wide.
Yeah, that's interesting, right?
Well, the moon is 2,000 miles wide. So why is the blackout zone only 70 miles wide? And science said, well, it convexes down, these funny optics, and it turns like a magnifying glass, but with shadows. And we're like, yeah,
Something that we would not understand or be able to prove on our own, because again,
exactly. Is
like you said, it may seem like hard work for us, but for somebody who knows it, or it's
oh yeah,
not out of the question. So if it wasn't the moon, then what, did something else block out the sun? A spaceship?
Exactly. I mean, the fourth one, of course, is the moon temperature, which I love so much. The moon generates a cold light. You can buy a point and click infrared thermometer or use different thermometers. But so if it's if it's 90 degrees in the sun, it's 80 degrees in the shade. We've all seen that. But in the moonlight, if it's 50 degrees in the moonlight, it's warmer in the moonshade. And I know that doesn't sound strange right away, but it's like, no. Meaning it's literally, you will get cold if you stand in moonlight. You will actually be warmer if you stand in the shade. And it shouldn't be that way. Now, does that make a flat Earth? No, it does not. But it absolutely destroys the relationship between the sun and the moon, because everyone knows, well, the moon is lit up because it's reflecting the sun.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we're told. Find me a scientist. I have yet to find a scientist to even explain. We've got wonderful experiments out there. In fact, there's even the best experiments, and I was the one that suggested this. If you take a magnifying glass to sunlight, you can burn things, right? Burn paper. You take a magnifying glass to moonlight, you can actually make things even colder than normal moonlight.
Really?
Yeah, it's mind blowing. And
I would have never thought about doing that.
There's video tests on this, and we've done tests again with water and copper strips and straight up infrared thermometers. And a guy did one a couple months ago with predator vision. The cameras that can see, like Predator does, the thermal imaging cams, and he proved it right then and there. He wasn't even one of ours. He just went out to see if he could do it. The other big one that I try to throw at people, the last one anyway, of my top 5, is the Van Allen radiation belt question, which again I've thrown at scientists. They don't know what to do with it, and I say, okay, is the Van Allen radiation belt, announced by NASA in 1959, is it deadly? Yes or no? And they say, well, it is, obviously. I go, really? I go, because the only thing that can stop radiation is water, a whole bunch of water, or lead, or gold, right? And so how do the Americans get through it without any shielding? Because they didn't use gold or lead or a whole bunch of water, and they made round trips from the 60s to the early 70s, and nobody died, and nobody got radiation poisoning, nobody even got cancer. There's still 5 of these guys walking around today. How'd they do it? And then I've seen guys flip. It's like, well, okay, well, it's not very deadly. I'm going, well, yeah, you can't go there either, because you go to the NASA.gov website, and there's a wonderful video there called Orion Trial by Fire, which NASA made. I think it won like a local Emmy in Texas, where they say, yeah, we can't do any capsule testing with people because we haven't solved the radiation problem yet of the Van Allen belts. And it's like, what are you talking about? You solved it perfectly. In fact, you solved it flawlessly. Nobody, you beat it. You beat the odds there. Nobody ever had a problem with radiation, and now you're saying you can't even test it. And yeah, between those 5 questions, it usually shuts people down. Again, do any of them absolutely prove flat Earth? No, but they create so much reasonable doubt in the globe that it gets you thinking. And and that's where people start. And again, well, I'll tell you and anyone's listening, if you like your life the way it is, you think you got a good feed on things, don't look at this.
Trust me, dude. This isn't the only thing that I've looked at where it's made me question, but
this one's bad, because once you're in it, I mean, especially if you're trying to fight it, you will have some really tough days where, I mean, I was sitting there. I mean, I had this moment literally where I was just banging my head on the keyboard. It's like, no, this can't be right. This can't be right. But again, the government lies about a whole bunch of stuff. Why wouldn't they lie about something like this? It's just information. That's all.
So Mark, now that we know this, what does this all mean, and who benefits from the globe agenda? Why? And I know we talked about Enoch and stuff, where they were
Right.
controlling the experiment. Who benefits from
Well,
all
the,
this?
the big benefit is, I hate to say it, it's us, which is it's just civilization. Meaning the problem with this one is that we didn't even figure it out. Even our best and brightest didn't figure it out till almost 1960. Well, by then the infrastructures have already been hardened. The civilization is already built up. I mean, you can't. It's pretty fragile. I mean, for God's sakes, look what the coronavirus is doing lately. And
Mm-hmm.
that's just a stupid virus, which may or may not be completely accurate. And so,
It's
if
5G,
that's the
by the
case,
way.
think about this. If you found out in 1960, remember this is way before the internet. You found out in 1960, would you tell the general public? So you sit down with a meeting with some of your, you know, smoking man friends, people of power, let's call it the power meeting. And you say, well, should we tell the people? And it's like, okay, well, what benefit does, first off, they'll say, who does it benefit if we tell people now? And then they say, okay, what could go wrong? It's like, oh, okay. Well, first off, every university in every country would have to, the astrophysics and astronomy, that's gone immediately. And then your remaining physical sciences, geology, hydrology, biology, archaeology, take your pick, those would literally have to be rebuilt from the ground up. Libraries would have to be emptied and refilled. I mean, it would be chaos in academics. That's just academics. Economically, world markets would have to be suspended for months until you figured out exactly what it meant, because you don't know. I mean, you're talking about a massive paradigm shift. But the biggest one, the reason it's like who benefits here? Who benefits is science more than anyone, which is what our civilization is based off of. You're talking about telling the five major religious houses of the world, Judaism, Hinduism, Buddhism, Islam, Christianity, you're basically telling them that they now have leverage against science, and you're also telling them not to use it, right? To show restraint. Do you think those religious houses are going to show restraint? Not really, no, because they've been beat over the head with textbooks for the last 5 centuries. And between those three things, you're talking about some potential big shockwaves that could go through the system. And so it wasn't that they benefited as much as they could use it to hold on to things until they decided to let this out to the general public and then figure out a way that it would benefit them. I don't think it benefited them anybody back in 1960. It was only like, it's okay, we can't let anyone know this. It's like telling somebody, they're adopted after they're 30 years old.
Yeah.
What good is it going to do? It's probably not going to do any good to tell them, but it could cause a lot of damage. And so that's where we are now. You're talking about the infrastructure has been put in place. You've got high-speed internet, social media, 6 billion smartphones. More people own smartphones now than have running water. And now you have a way of pushing out the narrative to everybody simultaneously to get the story straight. The old criminal thing, get your story straight.
Yeah.
That's what you have the ability to push out. And if you can do that, yeah, I mean, you can push out a fantastic narrative to where nobody even gets in trouble. I mean, all you have to do is say, well, an advanced civilization told us to do it, and make up anything you want, and that way you can let NASA off the hook somehow, because NASA's too big to fail. They're a branch of the U.S. military.
The U.S. United States. That's what I kept seeing on the models. United States, USA. It's
Oh
all
yeah, yeah,
the
NASA
American flag. But then again,
people.
the Nazis put us on the moon. If we
Well,
ever did go on the moon.
yeah, don't forget that even though NASA's so fascinating to me because, yeah, they wear white uniforms, they don't carry guns, they smile for the camera. They are the face of science, but they're uniquely military. They were built on the still burning embers of the Nazi war machine.
Mm-hmm.
The Soviets and the United States, we split the scientists. A little,
Yep.
a little tip for people: if you're really, really, really smart, you don't die
Yeah.
in war. You are more valuable than gold. And
Yeah.
that's what they did. It's like, oh yeah, we got to get some of these guys. You were packed, you were sent off, your war record is expunged, and you get
You're
treated
good.
like
You're good to go.
oh
Yeah.
yeah, you
So.
are set. Von Braun, he could do no wrong. He absolutely was, he could do anything he wanted. It's like, look, in any other situation, he'd be a war criminal.
Yeah,
For God's sake,
definitely. He is a war
he
criminal,
is a
pretty
war
much.
criminal. But if you're really really smart, again, resources are resources, and
Exactly.
you're not gonna we're not gonna
It's all
kill you.
about who you know, and to touch on that, that's why I like the flat Earth model, because it accents the simulation, because what you were saying about, let's say it was the reptilians, right?
Sure.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Or the insectoid race from Rick and Morty, from another planet, another dimension,
Yeah.
whatever. Let's say it is them, right? They're the elites. They're super rich. They have all the money. They were dealt a good hand in this simulation, right?
Yeah.
So it's like you said, why would they expose it
Oh
when
God,
they're
yes.
the ones that have the upper hand? And if we could leave this simulation, just how when that guy in the Matrix wanted to cut a deal with Agent Smith and said, "Listen, I wanna, when you load me back up, I don't want to remember anything. I want to be super rich, this and that, I want to have it all."
Yeah.
Why would he want to leave once he has all that?
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah, it's something, you kind of got me thinking about something which I'll probably use in interviews moving forward. It's like, because people ask me that all the time. It's like, who would benefit? It's not that you would benefit, it's that you wouldn't lose anything.
Yeah,
The rich don't want to lose their biggest thing is they don't want to be poor.
we ain't
You
got
don't.
nothing to lose. We're
Yeah,
peasants,
there's
and
a
they
there's a
do.
there's a wonderful rule of power. It's the number one rule of power, which is stay hidden. That is, I mean, it's kind of the weird paradox of having power is the true people of power can't be public
They're not on the
because
Forbes list. They're not on the Forbes list. They're
no, they're
behind the
not.
scenes.
And so when everyone says, "Oh, the richest man in the world," I correct everybody every time. I say
Oh yeah.
the most public man in the world. It's like when Bill Gates is like, Bill Gates, richest man in the world. Or at the time, I was like, no, he's the most public. And the reason why is because the old saying, the stay hidden thing, the longer version of that is never put yourself in a position where you can be overthrown. If the public doesn't know who you are, they can't burn it down. They cannot go after you.
Hmm.
And this
They
is
can't
why
revolt.
kings,
Yeah.
presidents, there's coups happen, but that's because, those are the people that took that risk. The really, really powerful people, they don't take that chance. They don't want to be known. And in fact, the X-Files, the series from the 90s, they were the ones that pushed that out more than anything, especially the X-Files movie, where the people that were sitting around the table, you had no idea who they were. And that's the point. Nobody knew who they were, and you were never going to know.
So Mark, I have two last questions for you, and we'll
Yeah,
wrap up with these two last questions.
sure.
Uh, I don't know if you've been asked this before. What would change your mind about flat Earth? What would you need to see to be like, listen, I will hang my gloves up, and I was wrong this entire time? What would it need to be, Mark, to
One of two things. And no, I have gotten that question before, not that often, but I've refined my answer over the years, which is the if you wanted to make it to where it would absolutely prove it for me, put a 4K camera on the capsule of any rocket that's leaving this world. Turn it on, point it at the ground. Don't point it up. Point it at the ground. Make sure it doesn't move. Make sure it doesn't sputter. And because everything we've ever shot up with rockets, the cameras are on like stage one or stage two, which is done very deliberately. And what should happen is as that rocket leaves, the Earth should turn, like you're moving a basketball away from your face. It should turn into a globe. And it's never happened in the history of space travel. In any space program, no one's ever done that. They always, when they get up to a certain altitude and it's not very high, they switch over to computer generation or CGI graphics, or they just start editing the footage. And it's like, give me unedited 4K footage from any rocket. I don't care whose rocket it is, and it wouldn't cost that much. You could put a third-party 4K camera. Just give me the freaking footage and let us analyze it like anything. Let us bring it into Photoshop or Visual Studio or whatever. That's the harder version, which is why I came up with the easy version. The easy version is the vacuum chamber test for me, which is it's simple because basically I'm saying that if the spacesuit is wrong, then every single thing that shows somebody in a spacesuit is also a lie. So, which is why it's like, look, every spacesuit you've ever designed, ever, again, statistics, no spacesuit has ever had a problem. Nobody's ever died in a spacesuit ever. It's been flawless from the moon, Mercury, Gemini, Apollo, Soyuz, the space station.
hmm
So give me a freaking spacesuit. I don't care what year it's from because they're all perfect apparently. Give me a freaking spacesuit, not tethered, none of this tethered G suit, the G-force suits they use in fighter planes. Give me a self-contained, because there's got to be, remember, there's this magical thing in the backpack that they've got, and put me in a vacuum chamber and pull the switch. And of course, it'd be nice if there was somebody from science in there with me. Otherwise, I'd just become a martyr. But that would go a long, long way, because if you can show, and of course, I'd want to know before I got in there. It's not a necessity, but I think I'd be curious. It's like, tell me, because I still have yet to find a scientist to do this. Tell me what is in that backpack that stops a freaking vacuum. Forget, I don't care about the heating and cooling and oxygen and CO2 scrubbers and all that other crap. Tell me what magical thing does that. And let me throw in one more little barb into that, which is, if you want to have some fun, find me any audio footage. I don't care if it's video or audio or whatever. Find me audio footage of any astronaut that ever talks about how much air he's got left. Ever. And you're thinking, well, what do you mean? I go, well, okay, if anyone knows anybody that's ever scuba dived, the only thing scuba divers ever care about is the freaking how much time is left. They're always looking at their watch or their gauges. How much air do I get left? They're checking constantly. And when they drop like on below 10 minutes, they're already thinking I'm on their way out. But when it came to astronauts, especially the ones on the moon, they never talked about it. They could just walk around and do all this stuff, and they never worked checking time and never find me someone that's like, oh, we only got 20 minutes of air left, Fred. Oh, my oxygen levels are down to, 13% or blah, blah, blah. Never, ever happened. And he's like, again, just glossed over it. People are like, oh, wow, they don't seem to. It's kind of like the, not to go off on a quick tangent, it's kind of like the gas gauges in Star Wars, right? So like 8 movies, there was no gas gauges. You could fly around, no problem, right? You never ran out of fuel ever. And then in the freaking Last Jedi movie, gas gauges. It's like,
yeah. That's when it's convenient. But, I saw an episode with Joe Rogan. We had that astronaut on. And
Scott Kelly?
Something like that. Speaking on like...
Oh, no, I think it was Hatfield. I think it was the mustache guy. Hatfield.
No, it was bald. It was a bald guy.
Oh, then it was Scott Kelly.
Yeah. So Joe Rogan, he's like, yeah, when I was looking out this window, because the time before that I went over there, there wasn't a window. And Joe Rogan was like, wait. There wasn't a window the first time you went, and then the second time, who built the window? And he's like, and he just changed the subject real quick, like, who the hell built the ISS station? Not only that, but you were talking about the vacuum of space. I was reading something up today that supposedly there was a hole in the space station one time, and they ended up closing it up with something. I don't know what the hell they closed it up with. But what?
Yeah. You're absolutely right. And I remember that because the hole in the space station. You can look this up, by the way. Because we pointed this out right away. Chris Hadfield tweeted the hole in the space station.
Yeah.
And the internet's really good about finding stuff. And they found that the hole that he used was the album cover for a Christian rock band from like 10 years earlier.
Yeah.
And the Christian rock band grabbed it from a NASA image that was 15 years before that. It's like, Hatfield, you ass. It's like, what are you thinking?
Yeah. Well, why would, doesn't that just right there just blow it out of the water? It's like, what? There's a hole. You would be dead.
You'd be dead. Well, again,
it would implode.
They go with the movie stuff, which is, they see a hole. It's like, oh, again, we only got 2 minutes of air left.
Bubble gum.
And yeah, exactly. Or the thing, by the way, I've got to mention Joe Rogan real quick, because Joe Rogan is the only person in the history of conspiracies that doesn't believe in conspiracies anymore. But he still, I think in his heart, because Alex Jones said that Rogan was compromised some years ago.
Yeah.
Which is why he has one of the best or the most popular podcasts in the country. But Joe Rogan was the guy, years ago. I mean, he went after NASA, and he with great conviction, and he was fun to listen to. Mm-hmm. And then he all of a sudden went off the air for like a year, and comes back, and lo and behold, he had a brand new show on the Sci-Fi Channel called Joe Rogan Questions Everything. And the very first episode, he apologized and recanted for anything bad he ever said about NASA.
Or like when he has Eddie Bravo on. Eddie Bravo, who he doesn't even let him talk when he's getting into flat Earth and all these crazy conspiracies. But
Eddie, Rogan knows. Rogan was clever though. He brings it up as many times as he can.
Yeah.
But he still has obligations to where he will never be able to endorse it. But yeah, he'll bring Eddie on and let him talk about it. And I'm glad Eddie, he's with us.
Yeah.
I was hoping he would go to the Dallas conference, but we'll get him eventually.
I want to wrap up with this last question, and we
Yeah.
can end on this note. How obviously you're into this whole community. You're pretty big in the community of flat Earth. Again, you
Yeah.
called yourself the freshman recruiter.
Yeah.
You had the Netflix documentary, which I know you guys had nothing to do with it, but it made you guys look bad at the end, something weird. But that's
Yeah.
a whole another,
That's a whole nother thing.
tangent. How are you able, or how have you dealt with the negative feedback and the dogma that just comes associated with this whole idea? Because again, we talked about at the beginning how people attack you. How are you? Do you do something in specific that you're able to deal with this? Is there a certain mindset?
Yeah.
How?
Yeah. There is, and you're right. People get really, really bent out of shape, and the first reaction, again, the 5 stages of acceptance. It's denial, followed immediately by anger, and it's because of the conditioning. But I can't get mad because I tell people, I go, I can't get mad at you or whoever it is. It's like, why didn't you yell at that guy? Because I was that guy. Because back in 2014, I was right there. I was absolutely, I remember physically being embarrassed by even clicking on my first flat Earth video, physically flushed. I mean, I actually turned red, and I caught myself. It's like, why am I getting embarrassed? I mean, God's sakes. I mean, I'm old enough. I've seen a lot of weird stuff on the internet, a lot of naked people that you shouldn't be, anywhere near. And this was not that. And so I became, it's hypocritical for me. I can't yell at people. I can't be mean and say, look, why are you yelling at me? You're being, all the hate, because I know exactly why they're getting bent out of shape. In fact, it's something I wrote about, I think in the first book, which I said, if you don't have an adverse reaction to flat Earth in the first 20 minutes, there's probably something wrong with you.
You're a reptilian.
Yeah, exactly. I
You
mean,
know the truth.
everybody braces against it, and why wouldn't they? I mean, you're basically telling people, again, it's like walking up to somebody and saying, "Oh yeah, by the way, I'm 99% sure you're adopted." And the more you say it, the more angry they get, until finally, all of a sudden it's like, "Oh wait, who are those people at the doorstep?" When I was really, really young. So yeah, no, I can't get mad. Can't do it. I try to set a good example, and I just try to stay the course, you put up enough positive energy up front, and people will generally know. The big key for me is not to get defensive right away, not to dig in my heels and start snapping back. If they take personal shots, sure, I might take a couple swings here and there, but most other people are nice, as long as you hold to your convictions and you believe it, and I do. Then things will have tended to work out fine.
Right on, Mark. Are you a reptilian by any chance?
uh, I was trying to think of something clever that would
You
make
signed a
sense.
NDA. You can't disclose it.
Yeah,
No
exactly.
further comment.
Wait, you're not recording this, are you? No. Could there be reptilians out there? Sure, maybe. I am not one of them, nor am I. Because people have said, "Oh, you're obviously a government agent." It's like, if I am the greatest secret agent of all time. And I am not. Anyone that meets me in person for 5 minutes, like, oh my God, he's a big dork. It's like, I
Yeah.
am.
So, Mark, thank you again so much for coming on, man. I had a great time.
Yeah.
I didn't ask you at the beginning, but I always do. To plug in your information, if people want to reach out to you, or if they want to read your books, your YouTube channel, so you can plug that in and people can
Oh,
look
yeah,
more and
yeah.
go more into the wormhole.
Just, you know what? There's so much content from so many great people. Don't focus on necessarily on my stuff. To get to my stuff directly, just type in Flat Earth Clues. If you type Flat Earth into YouTube, you're going to get a whole bunch of mainstream channels right off the bat. Flat Earth Clues will get you, if you just Google Flat Earth Clues, you'll get to a lot of stuff. And I've got playlists on my YouTube channel with all sorts of other creators. I mean, we've got wonderful content makers from everywhere, and there's a lot of great stuff out there. The book is called Flat Earth Clues. There's Sky's the Limit, End of the World. Those are on Amazon. The documentary is called Behind the Curve, and yeah, it's a wonderful journey. I'm just humbled to be a part of it.
Thank you so much, Mark. You've been a cool guy, great guest, and I really had a lot of fun with this episode, man.
Thanks.
Thank you for being on, Mark.
All right.
So there you have it. Space is fake, and the Earth is flat. What more could you ask for, right? And the reptilian overlords are trying to control us. So, remember to check out Mark's work on his YouTube channel. He's got a few books out. Also has some documentaries. Make sure to follow us on social media at the Juan Podcast. If you want to shoot me an email at thejuanajuanpodcast@gmail.com. Also, check out our website, www, guess what? thejuanajuanpodcast.com. So, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I had a lot of fun with it. Again, it's all a possibility. Just keep an open mind towards everything. Not saying I believe in flat earth, but a lot of things in history that make you go,